Okay, man, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Now, come on, now crank this motherfucker up.
Break it down like this.
Hello, Internet. Gino, that Pinguino Greco here again with another episode of Deep Listens. I'm back from vacation, and I am here to talk about game juice, a phrase you've probably heard on multiple podcasts by this point. But maybe you didn't know what it meant, because we don't necessarily explain it all that much when we say it. So we thought, hey, let's just do a podcast. Let's explain what that term means. Let's look at some games that have good juice, some games that are bone dry, and increase our understanding about game design and game design theory. Joining me, of course, to discuss game juice is the knower of all things games, the maintainer of game facts, M. Palladino, the mistress of games. Hello, M.
Hello. This was a topic on our first variety show, which I tried to explain, and I don't think it was very successful. So now I'm going to go full GDC talk and try to convey this concept, which you probably are familiar with on a fundamental level, but you probably don't know it's happening. So this will be a fun one.
Excellent. We are also joined by Braden, ArbitraryWater, Redacted. How are you doing, Braden?
Hello, I'm doing great. I am alive, intact, and only slightly tired.
I figured there's no one in the Deep Listens family that would know games that lack juice more than you.
I am, yes, I'm a game juicer. I make sure to get all of that game pulp.
You often are left with just the game pulp, and then other people get to have the juice.
Yes.
That's okay. Some people like just the game pulp. But
who?
I don't. Braden, do you
Dwarf
like just
Fortress
the game
fans?
Oh, yep. Dwarf Fortress fans do only enjoy the game pulp. That is definitely true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me do the normal plugs, and then we'll get into our discussion. You can get in touch with the show at Deep Listens Pod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have our comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. You can also support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens, which would get you access to our Discord. It would allow you to talk with members of the show. And with that, M, why don't you explain Game Juice?
So Game Juice. Game Juice is also referred to as Game Feel, which is a little bit more on the nose. Some designers don't like the term, such as one of the ones I'm going to probably reference a lot, who has an influential talk about this. Game juice. So when we are thinking about games, there's scores, there's story, there's graphics, there's music, there's level design. If you were to strip out all of the stuff that makes a game a story, if you reduced it down to the base gameplay, you would probably have a box which interacts with other boxes, which is not an especially compelling video game, generally speaking. Game feel is all about making those boxes that are colliding into each other feel as though something is happening to the player, because all of the effects of the game need to be like telepathically sent into your brain via what you are seeing on the screen. Juice is kind of how they convey stuff to you. That sounds vague when I say it that way, but that's literally what the concept is. I have a whole bunch of notes here, this is the second point. Juice is the abstract notion of something, but what is it? In video games, juice is a catch-all for things that make games interesting and feel good to interact with, rather than flat. So that is what we're going to be discussing.
I'm
Any
very
questions so
excited.
far?
I always took the game juice to be like feedback. How does the game convey information to the player in an aesthetically pleasing manner that makes the dopamine holes in your brain go
Auga!
Yes.
Yeah, this is where I
I
put
air
in
juggled this man and shot him with guns.
This is where I edit in the auga noise, because that's what your
Okay.
brain is doing.
Your brain's going humana, humana, humana.
Yeah. It is, let's see, purely about interactions / feedback. So when you are pressing a button on the controller, you want something to happen. And the more stuff that happens, the better your brain is like, awooga.
Yes, when we want the player to press a button and something awesome to happen. That's what they said in M's favorite game, Dragon Age 2. There's a BioWare developer interview
listen.
where someone uses the term awesome button.
Sometimes you gotta press the awesome button.
I hate
We're going
that.
to talk about all of the awesome buttons.
That moment was not endeared by the internet because BioWare fans are a special kind of fan.
Well, game juice. So, to kind of summarize, we're talking about anything. So, if you hit an enemy in a game and the screen shakes, or some sort of goop flies out of them, or their animation changes from their normal routine to their ouchie routine, or a limb pops off, anything like that that shows you that you made contact in a way that the game registered, that is game juice.
Yes, correct.
If you are mousing around on a menu and it's making nice aesthetic sounds, or the thing that gets highlighted doesn't just change colors, it, rainbows into colors to let you know that you're moving from thing to thing. That is game juice.
If the menu has a little jiggle to it as you're like tabbing up and down it, that's some good game juice right there.
Yeah. If you are getting damaged and there's suddenly Vaseline on the lens and you don't feel so good and the field of vision starts narrowing, that is
That's
game
raspberry
juice.
jam.
Yep. If it starts turning red, that's pretty good. If there are particles, big fan of particles. You could get like dust, explosions, things will blow up. That's all game juice.
Yes. So what do you think is like the best use of game juice that you've seen to really crystallize for folks?
Oh boy.
Like,
I'm
you had to pick
glad
one.
we ended our freestyle session. When the sky lights up when you cast that Blizzaga, that is game juice.
Let's see.
Summons were the original game juice.
Yep.
When you fire a gun and you hear the little tick, 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 tick of a hit marker,
Yeah.
that is game juice.
I have such a list of game juice we could go down. It's tough because one of the quotes I have here is from Jan Willem Niemann. I don't know how to pronounce a Dutch last name. I would have to ask Jeff.
Whatever you're saying is the worst way, though. I'm sorry.
That's fair. That's okay. I got his first name right. He gave a talk called "The Art of Screen Shake," which I'm going to quote probably a lot throughout this. He works for Vlambeer, who made Nuclear Throne, is the most notable one of recent memory.
Luftrausers.
Yes, Luftrausers, a flight game. Those are both chock full of game juice. And one of his quotes that he gave in the talk, The Art of Screen Shake, this was in 2013, is if it's not there, players will say this game sucks. But if it is there, they will just play and be happy. Which seems like the general consensus. If you do not have the game juice, The alternative is a game that just is like a lifeless blob. But if you have the game juice, it's like crunchy and it is flashing colors at you. So I actually tried to go into our records and find games that have like really good game juice. And then it was just like kind of every game we really liked.
Yeah.
So
Perhaps you've heard
like,
of Super Hot.
yeah, Super Hot, Hades, The Artful Escape even had a lot of game juice. Let's see, what else? Fortnite. Uh, Fortnite is probably the juiciest game that we've played in recent memory, and that's probably why it is popular with a lot of children, because it's just a lot of stuff being thrown at you at all times. They really nailed the aesthetic. So I think like Slay the Spire, even like this is a card game, but it also has a lot of like reactive effects. Stuff is popping off of you and the enemies all the time. The card drag is really reactive. I kept that one in there for Gino because
The text changes
like,
colors.
exactly.
Things get bigger if the numbers are bigger.
Yeah. Like similarly, some people have used other card games like Hearthstone as an example. Someone on a Reddit thread said that Blizzard is, quote, professional juicers. So with Hearthstone, every time you like move a card onto the field, it kind of like slams onto the ground. Let me clarify, I don't want to give Blizzard any press, but in this respect, I can throw them a bone. They know how to make cards like look not like a card game.
Yes.
Well, yeah, if you have infinite resources and the
Yes,
ability
exactly.
to play test your games to death,
Yeah.
you too can extract all of the game juice
You'll squeeze
out of
that game juice
your
like no one's
derivative,
business.
but very popular thing.
Yep.
Well, I mean, you say that, but Magic the Gathering Arena, when it first came out, they had lots of money and lots of time, but it has no game. It had bad game juice.
Oh, well, that's
Yeah.
because they're not as good at it as Blizzard.
Yep.
yes.
They weren't making a video game. They were making a card game in a video game.
They were making a hate factory.
Yes.
Yes. So, Braden, as a person who has messed with many games that have no game juice, that have absolutely nothing, what would you describe? So, like, I think the Skittles game that I watched you play is an
Darkened
example.
Sky.
Yes, Darkened Sky,
Hold on.
please buy Skittles.
Having not seen this, what is the Skittles game?
Well, Darkened Sky is a third-person action-adventure / platformer game from a
Of course.
Ukrainian developer named Boston Animation, the most Ukrainian of developer names, and it is in fact a officially licensed product tie-in with Skittles, a fine Mars candy, and in it you play as a sassy lady what collects Skittles to use magic.
Sure. Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, so in that game, when your character swung her Skittle stick, or whatever the weapon is called, you would hit things and they would not react in any noticeable way to you hitting them until they died.
They just go, and yeah.
They make a sound.
I think the big thing for me as a professional juice taster is hit reactions and lack of hit reactions. Is some games are absolutely able to compensate for this, but when the basic act of hitting a guy with a weapon does not produce any sort of stagger animation or anything, it doesn't make you feel good. It doesn't, and usually gameplay wise, that also doesn't work out great. Like, I'm sure we can all think of the Elder Scrolls Oblivion and the way everyone in that game just kind of takes your hits
Yes.
Yeah, it's
until
really
they
hard to
ragdoll
tell.
limply.
It's really hard to tell if you're actually effectively doing something if there is no juice to back it up. You'll
Yes.
just have to keep swinging, and maybe something is happening. There's a number changing, but what?
Yeah, early Bethesda
And-
games, for
yeah.
the most part, just trusted that the health bar that they put on the screen was enough. And sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't. But I remember when I was playing Fallout 3 for the last community endurance run, it was very remarkable to me that I would hit a rad roach. It would not even react. It would not even go backwards unless I hit a critical attack, in which case it staggered for half a second. And that was it until it died and went limp. So, like, those games really suffered for a while because there was very little feedback to their combat. And so, unless you got the Bloody Mess perk and added the game juice that way, those games, a lot of early Bethesda games, had to kind of get by on people being absorbed in the relatively, I guess, novel storytelling that they did for their time. Whereas other games, even at the same time, Fable 2, Fable 3, like the Fable series, those games felt way better to play, even if there was less depth to them in some contexts.
Yeah. Yep. It's weird to have something like, I mean, I get why we'd put it behind, maybe have an option to turn it off, but something like blood spray, which is a pretty strong indication that you have hurt something, to have that locked behind a perk is very strange to me. I wonder was there like a numerical value that changed with that too, or was it just like, you want to see some blood?
You got, I think, a 10% damage increase as well.
Yes, and
Okay.
I believe the way it worked was whenever you killed anyone, they would basically explode into bloody chunks. In the original Fallout game, Fallout 1 and 2, basically it just meant that like every single enemy death animation would be more likely to be, like the critical hit, people exploding stuff.
Sure.
And even better in the Fallout context, Fallout 3 context, when you have Bloody Mess, you can loot each of the giblets individually, which makes enemies easier to loot
I see.
because they are everywhere.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so what would you say is the best way to add game juice, and can you go too far?
So, I believe I said I have a list here. I could go down the list, but I think the one that everyone gravitates towards as like the golden gun of game juice is Screen Shake, which, if you've played a video game, you probably have played one that has Screen Shake and probably too much of it. I have in my notes Screen Shake, feedback that the player is affecting the world. You don't just hit something, you hit something. And then in parentheses, beware, this might make you nauseous. It's disorienting. So that is one that is really easy to take too far. Another one that CP has expressed his dislike for in the Discord, controller vibration. These two are probably things that should be used sparingly, and most of the time designers are like, crank that shit up to 11. It's definitely one of those things that it needs a more subtle touch, as opposed to just dumping the entire bottle into the mix. Because if you played a game that is just rattling the controller, you probably don't want that to happen too often.
Yeah,
That's why
or
most games turn that shit off too in the settings.
I feel like color flashing is also one
Yeah.
that is big. Like sometimes,
Mhm,
the screen will flash when you make contact with an enemy or when certain things are on screen, and those also can be very disorienting or distracting. Same thing with explosions, like death animations. If you're playing a shoot 'em up or something and there are many enemies on screen, if each of them is doing a bespoke explosion animation, you can just lose your whatever your character is in the middle of it.
Yep.
Braden, were you simply agreeing?
Okay. We have a blending situation.
My mom is using a blender upstairs. Sorry, I'm still at my parents' house. Shh.
That's okay. I can't actually hear it, so you're fine. Let's see. Yeah, color. Like if you flash the color in one of the, I posted like about 6 videos. One of the other founding texts of Game Juice is Martin Johansson of Grapefruit Games. They made Rimmed Capsule. I have not played this game. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. It does not look like an English word. Don't at me. Martin Johansson and Petri Perho of Clooney Games. He made Noita. They made Juice It or Lose It.
Those are Finnish people.
Oh yeah,
they know everything.
Sure are.
The people responsible for Noita and Crayon Physics and My Summer Car.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Oh, like here. Not to get on a tangent, but
go for it.
Noita is basically it's a Finnish super team of indie game developers who all teamed up to make this weird systemic physics interaction game. It's I think it's the Crayon Physics Deluxe guy, and I think it might actually be the My Summer Car guy. I'm gonna look this up. Go ahead.
So do you mean to tell me that this is the ABBA of game developers?
Yes, they are it in the same way that Yuji Horii and Hironobu Sakaguchi teamed up to make Chrono Trigger. So too did Finland's finest indie developers team up to make Noita. You should play it.
Pretty good.
I've not heard of Noita. I'll have to look it up.
I have it on my list, but we can't play it this year because I'm torturing you. But cool. Anyway, they gave a talk. I believe this was in like 2009, I think. It was a while ago. Juice It or Lose It, where they have just a regular old like Breakout clone that they made, and they keep adding like different elements of juice to the game. Like they change the block colors, they make it so there is a tween. I don't know if people know what tweening is. It's
between animations, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It is basically animation transition.
Yeah. Where you could just have a block disappear when something like the ball hits it, you then like have it sort of shrink. And this is easily done with just like a single line of code. It's one of those cheats that they're like, oh, you could throw this in there. One of the things they do, which I think is one of the last steps that they take, is like making the black background flash whenever a ball gets hit. And that's probably the step too far. Because I was like, okay, I've been with you this whole time, and now I think this is a seizure warning. So very jarring. But up until then, I'm like, yeah, you got a point. I think taking it to the logical extreme and then working your way backwards is probably the better way to do it, though. Turn some of that down, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's such a thing as too much feedback, right?
Mm-hmm. If everything is feedback, then nothing is feedback.
Wow. Anyway, I looked it up. Noita was made by Crayon Physics Deluxe, The Swapper, and Baba Is You people.
Oh, wow.
And and you can see all 3 of those game designers' ideas in Noita. It's a weird
most
game.
Of those games. I like elements of most of those games.
Yeah. Let's see if you like it all thrown together.
How do you feel about fluid simulation?
The more it undulates, the better.
The literal juice that is burning through the ground because it's acid.
Mm-hmm.
I think I like it.
It's like that fluid simulation visualizer, except also there is a platformer attached to it. That's what I remember about
Also,
Noita.
it's a roguelite where you
Yeah.
play as a wizard.
Yep.
We will have to check this out at some point.
Yes.
So, Braden, what is it when you play a game that has bad juice? What is the it's just lack of feedback from hits? That's the gravest sin?
I think the gravest sin is lack of feedback to the player. I think if you can see this in some of my recent streams. I'm not going to name the games, but there are a couple games that have played recently where I was getting shot from places I did not know, and the game was not indicating the direction from which I was being shot.
That's the worst.
And I think that is a grave sin.
It's true. Bayonetta has a system in place where enemies that are off of the screen cannot actually hit you unless there is a telegraph, like from outside the screen, because that shit sucks. No one likes that.
Yeah, and I think some of the best games, like with enemies off screen, they will give you like a red indicator or an arrow telling you there's something off screen. They might like throw an exclamation point in from the side of the screen where the enemy's attacking from. Like the best games give you feedback even when you cannot see something. And the worst games just hope that you notice it. Like just hope that you've mapped the digital space in your head.
And to be clear, I think, some games can be successful in spite of this, but the ones I've played recently definitely are not successful. And part of that has to do with, oh God, I'm being shot and I don't know from where.
Yeah, for sure. How do you feel? Are you a fighting game? Have you played fighting games?
I'm not
I've
big
played
into
fighting games.
but I know what you're getting at. Braden, you can take this one.
I think fighting games, a lot of fighting games are very good at juicing.
Mhm.
They're just out there in the locker room shooting themselves up every day with game juice, anabolic game juice. And I think a lot of it has to do with like one of my favorite things is the way like in Tekken 7, if you get a particularly hard hit in, like the game will slow down for a split second.
That's
and
the good shit.
And also the way that game will, if you are both trying to hit each other at the same time, the game will slow down and zoom in. I think big, fun, flashy lights to show you have hit something is very important for a fighting game.
Yep.
When Ryu does his Shoryuken, you gotta have both an audio and visual feedback to know you done uppercutted.
Yeah. My fighting game notes here, hit lag is the big thing in fighting games. There's like this very small millisecond pause if you land a solid hit. That is, in my notes, I have it capitalized. Momentary pause when capitalized the thing happens. You have successfully done the thing. And then my example was going to be the smash attack in Smash Bros.
Yep.
Which they've tuned so well to be more juiced in the most recent iteration. It like pauses for a split second. There's like a bright flash, and then you go shooting off the screen. It's one of the most effective ways of doing it. And once it happens, you done fucked up.
You've gotten got.
Yeah.
My favorite thing
over.
to look at is the evolution of Street Fighters as they've gone on, because Street Fighter 2, I think the music changes when someone is at low HP. There is a little bit of hit lag when you make solid contact. Then when you get to 3, I believe the background responds when you hit someone especially hard. Like things in the background will fall or jump or move to let you know you're doing good. And then the animation hit stun is also even more extreme. Then you get to 4, where you get the focus attack, where when you use that move, it's a charge attack that lets you take 1 hit, and then after you release, you can take 1 hit and then attack through, and you kind of get like gray damage, so you'll heal it back if you don't get hit. But if you fully charge it, your character gets inked up because they went with kind of a Japanese calligraphy theme for Street Fighter 4. So there you get this even more visually striking attack when you charge it up all the way. And when you hit someone with it, they crumple. They are immediately staggered, regardless of whether they were blocking or not, which is also very cool. Then Street Fighter 5 had an even inkier kind of critical hit visual language. And now Street Fighter 6, it looks like it's like paint.
Yes.
Make that shit inkier.
Yeah,
More.
based on what people have been saying about, pre-release stuff, it's apparently slower, but they are trying to make all of the hits a lot heavier.
Good shit.
That's good shit.
Yeah, it's amazing to me to see just in one series how they have taken, like Street Fighter did a pretty good job in Street Fighter 2 of giving you feedback, but they've added actual mechanics to emphasize, like they've added juice to specific mechanics, and those mechanics are kind of some of the standout features of those games because of how juiced up they are. They also added the Ultra Combo in Street Fighter 4, which is a comeback mechanic where the more damage you take, you get this extra bar that will do a super duper sick move, but you only get access to it when you get beaten up. And those always have just incredibly elaborate animations. Like it will actually cut to a different camera angle when you use those moves, whereas regular supers in Street Fighter 4 just, they're just super moves, right? Like it's just a Hadoken that hits more times. But if you do the ultra Hadoken and you hit someone with it, it goes into a full cutscene showing just how much you messed that person up. And I appreciate that. 5 did even more with that. 6 even more. And I believe 5 and 6 also use changes of camera angle and more changes of perspective on just throws and other moves that hit especially hard, whereas 4 kind of left it mostly to ultras for the most part. And I guess the spinning pile driver, I think, also has a camera perspective change.
Yes. Yeah. And in the same way, MK11 will sometimes zoom in and just show like, oh, your ribs are shattering.
Oh yeah, the X-ray attacks.
And they've added, like, they have made those things gnarlier as time has gone on.
Oh yeah,
If you
to the detriment of their developers.
Yes.
People are traumatized, but who's counting?
I had to watch all of these horrible videos in order to make sure that Scorpion was impaling you better with his spear.
The price we pay.
Yep. Nowadays, do you think any modern games really... AAA games do not screw up on Game Juice anymore. They are way too polished. Do you see any games that intentionally do not have Game Juice? Ones that seem to abstain from it and succeed?
That's a good question.
Because I could point out a lot of games that have bad Game Juice that are not good and do not succeed.
Yeah. Like I said, it's hard to tell if it is happening, but it is very obvious if it is not happening. So I was thinking about all the good Game Juice. Now I'm trying to think of bad Game Juice.
I think
What do
early
you have?
PUBG, like early PUBG before they,
I actually have an answer to this.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
So, I recently played a couple hours of Hell Let Loose, which is a World War II sim-adjacent shooter, let's call it. It's very squad-focused. It's very, like, you need to be talking to people over voice chat sort of stuff.
I think a friend of mine plays this, but I haven't played it myself.
I did not purchase it, but I enjoyed what I played during the free weekend. But in that game, they very intentionally do not have hit markers. They do not tell you when you have killed someone. because
it's meant to be simulation.
Because it is meant to be like fucking crazy war shit happening all the time.
Mhm.
Like the audio design in that game is immaculate and it is very juicy. But when you shoot someone, the only way to know they're dead is if they don't shoot you back, or
If
they
go
crumple
over to
into a
them.
heap.
Yeah.
But that was hard to adjust to.
That's
But
interesting.
it's intentional because they want that ambiguity as part of the video game.
Right. If Call of Duty was doing that, it would have not reached the heights that it did, because it's all about fast-paced, like responsive. You want to know that you are doing the killing.
That Call of Duty is responsible for every other shooter having that little hit marker in the center of the crosshair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't get Grunt Fiesta in Halo. if people did not enjoy Game Juice.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Bennett Foddy's Getting Over It doesn't have very much Game Juice.
No,
like
not
those
really.
physicsy games sometimes don't.
Yeah, but if you want to talk about a Bennett Foddy game that is full of Game Juice, I don't know if either of you have played Ape Out. Have you heard of Ape Out?
I'm aware of Ape Out.
Yeah.
Ape Out is percussive violence.
Yes. Ape Out is like you are a ape that was trapped in a cage, and then you get out of your cage and you start running through the facility where you're being held, and people with guns are trying to kill you. And you, being an ape, run through and punch them very hard, and they go flying into walls and explode.
And it has this very minimalist color scheme.
Yeah. This is actually out of my alma mater, NYU Game Center. Matt Bach does the sound design. He is known for, I believe he was doing, what was it? One of the Guitar Heroes or one of those. And so every time the ape hits something, there's like a percussive beat, and the background music is very much conscious of what you are doing. It's very nicely effective. And they were working on that while I was in school, so I got to play test it, and everyone was like, this shit's gonna be huge. We gotta play it at some point because it's just stupid fun. I don't think there's an end to it. We'll find out.
Yeah, so I think those are great examples of games with game juice, and I think we've got some that modern games, despite all of this academia, choose to abstain. Do you think minimalist games really benefit from the lack of it? Now that I feel as though game juicification, the juiciness of indie games now and many AAA games, leaves some space for, kind of like the indie movie reaction to Marvel in many ways. Everyone enjoys a good big action movie with lots of flashing colors and blinding lights, but that leaves things like if you ever go back and watch Police Story or one of the Jackie Chan films, where there is action, but the action has physical weightiness to it, and it's just, normal human proportions, all of a sudden has much more weight in a world where everything's enhanced through the moon. And I feel like there's some room for games to be more deliberate, be more picky.
It's like Die Hard.
Yeah.
The juice coming out of his feet because he stepped in broken glass.
Mm-hmm.
That's the juice that lets you know John McClane
is a normal man.
Is a normal man suffering real stakes.
I mean, I'm thinking about it, and I think that there is a trade-off, because I think we're thinking in terms of the shooter paradigm of there's got to be blood spray and hit lag, and all the guns that shoot one bullet should shoot 3 bullets instead, because why not? And then I think there's still juice to be had in like a game like Monument Valley or something like that, where there's like, your movement is kind of bouncy, and blocks kind of do that tweening thing that we talked about. So it's in different ways, but I don't think it completely does away with it. Like, there are small things that are still incorporated, like scene transitions is one of the examples that was brought up, which you don't really like think about when you're playing the game. But for something like Celeste, which is a juicy game, whenever you die, there is like a little flash of a transition right before you get sent back to the start of the room. So there's still stuff, and I think it would take like someone with a magnifying glass to pick through every game. But I think that every game that is past a certain amount of polish, polish is another term for like game feel. It's like everything you do after you've developed the core systems is polishing it in service to what the game is about. If your game is about shooting lots of guns, you're going to be refining the gun system to make it more like explosive and maximal. If your game is about like moving through a little world, you're going to get the movement to feel good. Stuff like that.
Yeah, I like games that selectively deploy the game juice.
Yes.
They pick like 2 or 3 things to make feel really good instead of overwhelming your senses,
Yeah.
I was just thinking about this as you were talking about this, but I think about certain kinds of games that are trying to do a lot of different things at once. Your Ubisoft style open world games that have like 18 different mechanics. There's driving, there's some sort of perfunctory stealth, there's shooty shoot, and I don't think, and in a lot of cases like that, you have times where those individual mechanics don't necessarily feel super good, and so when I think about the games I like games that are very focused and juicy, and I like games that are, I guess, if you are focused on only a handful of mechanics, you can make those mechanics very responsive to the player.
You refine your select few, and then the game feels better for it. If you're just going out in all directions, people are going to know, and it's not going to feel as nice because you can't account for everything.
Yep, for sure. So, Em, are there any other game juicy topics that we have not covered that you wanted to make sure our audience took away from our game juice discussion?
Oh, there's so much more to say about it.
Well, go ahead. You have the floor.
Let's see. One of the things that came up when I was watching the videos that I sort of primed this discussion with is like the concept of friction. So this is something for specifically like platformers. Super Meat Boy is the one that comes up a lot. It's like Super Meat Boy has very precise platforming. It's compared to something like Little Big Planet, which we talked about actually in the variety show last week, which has sort of more floaty effects. This is one of the examples that like you would never think like to compare these two if you weren't looking at this specific like subcategory of game juice. But Super Meat Boy benefits from this like precision, this friction, and then Little Big Planet is just like all about having a floaty kind of experience. It kind of suffers from that. And then
how would you define friction?
So friction, it's
momentum in this case.
Yeah.
Like changes of momentum.
Yes.
When you change direction, there should be a amount of time where you are accelerating.
Yeah.
So you're not going from 0 to 100. And also it's better. So Super Meat Boy has some momentum changing, but it moves very linearly in how it accelerates. So like, imagine you get up to full speed in Super Meat Boy and then decelerate and turn direction to go the other direction. It feels like everything is incrementing by 1 as you accelerate and then decrementing by 1 as you turn in the other direction. Whereas you want it to be a curve.
Yeah.
You want it to be either a fast acceleration and then a slow petering to the top end, or a harsh stop and then a acceleration in another way. It's those stops and starts, those bits of tension when you're changing direction that add weight. Does that sound about right, Em?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting towards. It's like another example in the same wheelhouse is Super Mario 64, which Shigeru Miyamoto was basically tuning in a empty room for the majority of like early development, just to get like the friction and the momentum and Mario's weight down, and then everything that is designed in the levels, like from the enemies to the like sliding around on stuff, slopes and all that, is designed to highlight and facilitate like these elements. So like if you're on ice, the friction is turned way down. You have to account for that. And it kind of has survived because people can play around with all of these little components. Speedrunners really like to, change these values, like the friction and the momentum or Mario's weight, just to sort of play around with it a little bit more, which makes it an interesting experience as like a case study in this. Like, because this is all just like tuning. You could go into Unity, set a box to have a certain amount of friction, momentum, and weight, and then bounce around, and it would be completely different from an experience anyone else would have with a similar, like, vaguely changed block, because, like, one of the points in one of these talks was there are as many different play styles as there are people on the planet, so you kind of have to tune the experience towards what you want to convey. In the case of Super Mario, it was like, we want Mario to have all the tools to get through this world, bouncing around. Super Meat Boy, it's speed running, basically. You want it to be fairly precise. Little Big Planet is meant to be open-ended because it's more focused on like construction and that sort of thing. So it's like 3 very different takes on this like friction component. So I thought that was neat.
And each of them takes that sense of momentum, and you can understand why they came to the decision they did. Mm-hmm. Why Super Meat Boy has pretty fast acceleration and pretty precise controls, but still is very responsive to Little Big Planet, where it's not especially responsive. It's very floaty, but it's a powerful physics engine. So you needed a consistent physics model so that, look, you could play Little Big Planet as a platformer. You can also play it as a piano. It needed to be able to handle both things. And so its physics model was deliberately very loose so that it could handle a lot of, I think you can dial the gravity up too in that game.
Yeah.
And then Mario it's a straightforward platformer with a lot of exploration, whereas Super Meat Boy is not. It's mostly for running through very quickly. So you got a more diverse set and a different distribution of momentum in a Mario.
Yep. Yeah, I think we've kind of honed in on it.
And would you like me to play Gadfly for a second?
Sure.
What's the difference between putting game juice in a game and just being good at game design?
That's an interesting question. An anecdote, sort of similar. I do Warhammer painting. I've painted Warhammer miniatures for probably upwards of 5 or 7 years now. And one of the early tips that the person who taught me about painting was like, this is null oil. This is a black shade you can basically slap on any model you want to, and it's like talent in a bottle. It'll make the shadows darker, and it takes a good-looking paint job to great. I think game design is kind of like doing the undercoats, like your base coats, your, paint your cloaks red and your armor in the metallic of your choice. And then the game juice is slap some null oil on that shit and get all of the cracks to be dark and shadowed.
Fill them nooks. Fill them with
Fill
goo.
those nooks.
Do that dry brushing.
Exactly. Once you get your base coats down, another thing Jan Willem said in his talk, he spends probably like a week or two actually making the game, and then a year doing all the game juice. And this is, Vlambeer, so this is their thing. They're all about juicing it.
Simple game juiced out the wazoo.
Exactly. Just take it from, good to probably too much in some people's opinion. But they got very popular because of that. So it's like you can do as much or as little as you want to. And if you do more, you're probably going to reach a point where it's Tetris effect, which we have different opinions on. Tetris effect is all juice attached to a Tetris game.
Yes. It is a specific kind of juice.
Yeah.
It's drug juice.
Yeah, Tetris Effect is the video game equivalent of crack cocaine. I
think that's Pac-Man Championship Edition DX.
Another game
like
that is flashing lights and colors and drugs.
Hold on, what is it? Pac-Man?
Championship Edition DX. So in regular Pac-Man, there's you're avoiding ghosts. In this Pac-Man, you are making combos, trying to eat dozens, and you're trying to aggro ghosts.
Create a giant line of ghosts to devour.
And the more ghosts you eat, the more the screen shakes and the game slows down and sounds accelerate.
Yes.
This thing. Why haven't I heard of this in this talk? Holy shit.
Yes. And then we get to the nefarious part of this, which is why loot box opening animations are so good.
Yeah, that's the, video game development has a certain level of responsibility to the player that needs to be taken into account. And if you do not remain cognizant of this, you may create a gambling machine.
Oops, we made a slot machine.
Oops, whoops.
And that is definitely game juice for evil. It's your, loot box animation that lasts for, 20 seconds and shoots all of the colors and goes from a loot box animation to a sub loot box animation to let you know that you really got the good stuff.
Have you guys played Vampire Survivor?
Yes.
Oh, hell yeah, I have.
I know exactly
they do
what
that.
you're talking about.
They do that shit too, where sometimes you'll open a box and one thing comes out, and sometimes 3 things come out and it's better.
And it's 5.
And then there's 5, and that shit is fucking
dopamine.
Fireworks going off. There's sparks and lights, just dopamine hit after
gold raining
hit.
From the sky.
Yep. That's
it's almost
the shit
parodic,
we're talking about.
if not for the fact that it works and it makes my brain feel good.
Yeah, that's how it gets you.
I think we should, that's a good place to mention. Like, game juice can 100% be used for ill, and game juice also is not a substitute for game design. Like, there are some games that are all juice, no game. And-
Still have
Unloaded
the
Saga
main
has some
problem.
very pretty animations on those slots in Unlimited Saga. That's a very slick animation, right?
Yep. Those strings that play when you get into combat and your character's little war shouts, those look kind of cool, but at the end of the day,
You're still playing Unlimited Saga.
yep,
Yeah.
you are. Any
You could
other
You could
big
just
lessons?
be doing actual crack cocaine. So
Great point.
I can't claim to know what that feels like firsthand.
to be fair,
To be fair,
yeah, I also do not. But if I did, I would think it would feel kind of like that.
I have played Tetris Effect
Mhm.
under the influence of drugs, which are legal
Uh-huh.
in most states in this country.
And how did you feel?
I recommend it.
Can't
Thankfully,
complain.
I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of the
Tetris?
weed.
Oh.
No, Tetris is fucking great. But playing Tetris Effect under the influence of mind-altering substances, highly recommend.
see, I'm thankfully I learned about the film, the HBO mockumentary Tour de Pharmacy today.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in it, one Nathan Fielder plays a regulator of drugs. And during that, he says, well, I needed to try all of the drugs so I knew what people were dealing with. And then I painted several paintings while I was on each drug to capture the feeling of being on that drug. And he shows the painting of crack cocaine. And it is him blowing a bear.
Okay.
And then he also has a painting of amphetamines, which is also him blowing a bear, but with a slightly different brush stroke. And then meth is the bear blowing him.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
So there you go. If you
I
ever
buy
wanted to
that.
know what that's like.
Thank you. And now I don't have to do any of those.
Nope. Don't have to do it at all. So with that, I think we've gotten to the end of our Game Juice discussion, unless, Em, there's something else you've got that you really think our listeners should know about the juice.
If you want game juice, play any Devolver Digital game.
Yep. Those games
yes.
are 90% juice.
Play any sort of play Ninja Gaiden
Mm-hmm.
when you do the flying swallow and you cut that dude's head off.
Yep. Play Hotline Miami.
Yes.
Yeah. That game's so... Ugh.
You'll experience all that dopamine, and it's because of game juice.
Brought to you by... Someone has to have trademark. Can we check and see if there's a trademark
Oh, if there's a
on
Game
Game
Juice.
Juice
game juice.
as a food?
Game
As a
juice.
drink.
Gamer
Can-
juice.
No, Game Juice.
Get
Gamer
some
juice
juice
sounds
for your
terrible.
gamer
Drink.
juice.
Bad news. Game juice is an energy soda aimed at gamers.
Damn
based
it.
in
Damn
South
it.
Florida.
Even worse.
Game Juice Inc.
Crocodiles love game juice.
The Deep Lists podcast does not endorse the energy drink Game Juice. We do endorse the game design concept of Game Juice.
We do not endorse South Florida.
Which, yes, that is also true.
Uh,
I endorse when you swing a weapon and it does like a cool motion blur effect with the weapon trail.
hell yeah. Hell
Um,
yeah.
I've been playing a lot of Vermintide too recently,
Mm.
and that game is very good at juicing in the way it will do audio-visual feedback. For example, if you hit an armored enemy, you will hear the clonk of you
Ooh.
bouncing off the armor. You will
Nice.
see a little indicator in the middle of your screen. And sometimes characters will be like, "Aim for the head," And I just think that game is very good at audiovisual feedback. Samson agrees.
Last question.
Yes.
What do you think is the subtlest use of game juice you've seen where it really impressed you?
Oh boy.
Because playing
I
through
like menu
MGS3,
bloops.
MGS3, like the subtle shake, like Metal Gear Solid might be one of the only PS2 games that realized that the rumble feature was analog and not digital. A lot of PS2 games were just like all rumble or no rumble.
Yep,
MGS
100%.
is like, here's a tiny little rumble because someone's sneaking up behind you or something. I appreciate it there.
I think I got one. I don't have a specific example for this, but I do have it on my list. Having more enemies, but each enemy has less health. If you have 3 enemies with 3 hit points each, you could have 9 enemies with 1 hit point. So you could shoot so many more guys, or
Yes.
do whatever your verb is.
And what if those guys were rat men? And what if you had a big sword that swung through all of them?
What if you had a chainsword and it made a vroom as you
Dark
were doing
Tide
it?
coming out November 30th.
I don't know if that's necessarily a subtle way of doing it, but it's definitely different psychologically.
For sure. Braden, do you have any subtle game juicing that
I
jumps
like
out to you?
I like tactile menus. I think that's a good, like, if a menu has good bleep bloops, I like that.
You gotta
I like
have good bleep
old
bloops.
school 90s 2000s Japanese menu design.
Mm,
I like that. I like
a
the
fine vintage.
the shrill noise that happens when you select commands in Suikoden. I like the Resident Evil inventory where it's trying to be like a digital thing, so
Yeah.
every single time you move the cursor it makes a little bloop, and when you select something it makes a different bloop. Big fan of bloops over here.
If I could bottle the like PlayStation era menu noise from like an FF8, 7, 9, like those bleeps and bloops, I would do it. That is my love language.
Just make it so every time you touch something on your phone, it makes one of those bloops.
Then I know my phone is good.
Yeah, that's how you get a good phone.
All right. Well, thank you, Em, for taking us through this excellent lesson into a term we use so often on the show.
Thank you. I hope it was helpful. I want to leave you with some quotes from one of the videos I watched, because Jan Wilhelm he is a game designer. He is not a public speaker, but it probably has some of the most quotable lines in all of the videos I've watched. Just a few. If you have a button that does something in your game, you need to give the player a reason not to press it. Otherwise, you may as well perform that action automatically all the time. Just good game advice. Don't put things in your game that hurt people physically, in reference to maybe you have too much screen shake.
Maybe the light flashes are too bright. Speaking of games I've played recently,
Yeah.
that are maybe meant for, let's say, CRTs with lower brightness settings.
Yes. You might as well put a lot of shooting in there, because it's my only way to communicate with this sad world of this game. And then the last one. No, 2 more. Just fill your game with love and tiny details. And games should have meaning and triple machine guns. Thank you for your wisdom,
points.
Jan Willem.
Thank you for that, Em.
He made Lufttrousers, so who am
Yeah.
I to disagree? That game. Hey, remember how the music in that game changes depending on what weapons you have equipped?
I
Pretty
do.
good stuff.
It's very good. Thank you, M, for teaching us. Braden, thank you for joining in and telling us about the pulp that we don't see. Because
I'm here to discover the pulp of life, and it looks a lot like Daymare 1998 or the X-Files Resistor Serve.
And thank you, listeners. Thank you for everyone who's been hanging out in chat. Reminder, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have our comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. You can also support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens. Please do reach out if you like this show, if you like us kind of doing a deeper dive onto terms we've used or specific topics rather than just a specific game. Give us some feedback. Let us know, because we would be happy to do these as, off-week shows more regularly. So, till next time.
Look
Peace.
forward to Legend of Dragoon and Metal Gear Solid 3. You
Yes.
nerds.
Coming
Games
soon.
we're having
And,
so much fun with.
yeah, and Final Fantasy
Lightning
13,
Returns,
3,
Final
Lightning
Fantasy
Returns.
13.
Those are coming. Don't be concerned. I was away for a bit, but now I'm back. So those are coming. Till next time. Peace.
Break it down.